Hey, this is Rob Anspach with eHeroes, and today's eHero, I'm bringing Adam Hommey back because he was our very first guest, but today it's going to be something special because I've been watching social media lately. This is what I do every single day, but the politics are just getting insane. So that's what we're going to talk about today: politics and being an entrepreneur, because honestly, sometimes you just can't mix it all on social media. So welcome.
Rob, it is always a pleasure to be on eHeroes. I want to thank you so much for having me back. We always have a great time, and you're one of my favorite people on social media. And what I love about you is just your authenticity. It took me a minute to figure out what you were doing. Then when your blog post started turning into books, it's like, oh, I get it. I get it. So, and to me, the code is basically you just let people know who you are authentically and what kind of person you are. People come to like your personality, then they start to get curious about your services and what you do for them, and they hire you. So basically, you're literally building know, like, and trust right under their noses.
Well, one of the things that people say, "Hey, Rob, what is it that you do?" And I say, "Well, besides sarcasm," and then it goes from there. And they're like, "Huh?" But you can't please everyone, and I think that's really what we want to talk about today is
Yeah.
that you know the whole engage but not enrage. And we've been seeing some really lunatic people out there that are posting stuff on social that they shouldn't be posting.
Oh boy, yeah. I mean, I've seen cases where when somebody posted something and it actually impacted their friends or their clients or the people who worked for them just by association. People who I see them post these things and I'm thinking, please don't do this. This is not helping your brand. It's actually harming your brand. I mean, if you only want to work with people of a certain political ideology or somebody who feels a certain way about a religious issue or a social issue or something like that, then figure that out during your prospecting calls with them. Get personal with them, find out where they stand on these things, and make your decisions from there. I mean, you within certain parameters you can do that, but if you're posting that type of stuff on social media to excess, not only are you warding off everybody who thinks differently than you could actually be warding off people who think similar to you because you're that one nut they don't want to be associated with.
Yeah, and I don't mind if I see people post here and there,
Yeah,
hey, I'm disgruntled and this is why.
yeah,
But when they make every single post a political filled hated whatever it is that they're trying to you know get across, then you're going, do I really need this toxic person on my list? No. Block, block, block. I just and I've had to do that with a lot of people over the last couple of days, especially those of higher caliber positions,
mhm,
lawyers, doctors, even politicians that you would think, okay, they're riding the fence maybe, but they're just, they're just going crazy.
right. I and Rob, I think there's a few things at play here. And the first one I'm going to share with you is what I've said many times in other forums, which is the rise of social media, new media, and instant media has been both a blessing and a curse.
Mhm.
Because with technology, the ability to do things like Facebook Lives, YouTube Lives, build a following on some social platform, write 160 or 320 characters, and have thousands of people liking it, sharing it, and commenting on it, has created what I like to call the democratization of information dissemination. On the one hand, this is great because it helps to break formal and informal attempts at censorship and allow new voices to be heard. At the same time, it allows new voices to be heard, and you have to be cautious about what you're hearing because it may not be fact-based. It may be contrary to the facts. In many cases, it's an expression of the person's own opinion. Now, if they're a commentator or they are an opinion sharer, that's fine because they're sharing an opinion. But where I think part of the origin of this term fake news is a juxtaposition of the words news and, say, journalism. Let's use those two terms, news and journalism. And the way I define them, and other people may define it differently, but I'm just using this for the purpose of our conversation. News is simply facts. At 8:15 p.m., such and such happened. We're telling you the chronology. Journalism is when you write a story, literally journaling, writing a story. Like, people keep a journal, and within that journal, you tend to have nuances, you tend to have opinions, you tend to have slants. So when you understand the distinction between those two things, I think it helps to disambiguate to a certain degree, and ways that we'll cover more as we go through the rest of our conversation, it helps you to communicate more effectively with people who both agree with you and disagree with you.
You know, yeah, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I believe wholeheartedly. But I think that people use their emotions so much on social, they don't even take a time to investigate what it is that they're getting mad about. They just, you know, like you're saying, fake news. I mean, but it's designed to, you know, exhibit that emotion out of you.
You want the truth, Rob?
No, I can't handle the truth.
Well, good for you, because if you want the truth, there's no such thing as the truth. What? No such thing as the truth? Here's another case where we want to disambiguate our terms. We have facts and we have truth. Facts are what happened, just like I used when I created the distinction between news and journalism. Facts are, at such and such a time, this happened, and this is a chronology of it. These are the things that we can prove through scientific method. These are things we can prove through visual observation, through taking pictures, through witness testimony, what have you. Truth is something that exists within each one of us. My education, my family, my background, my experiences through life, my experiences through business create a lens through which I view the world, and that forms my truth. And that may be in some ways different from your truth. You and I agree on a number of things, and there are some areas where you and I have different opinions, and that's fine. Doesn't make, just three. Doesn't make either of us right or wrong, because we're viewing it through our own truth. Now, when you come to understand the distinction between the truth, which I argue doesn't exist, and a person's own individual truth, you have now created a platform for which a conversation can begin. Because when you see people expressing an opinion, when you see them emoting, you see them getting all hyper about something and posting memes and things like that, a place you can start with is understanding who they are. What has brought them to where they are today? What is the lens through which they view the world and form their truth? And once you understand that, and once you can acknowledge that and allow that to be, as long as your truth is also being respected, then you know where each other are coming from, and that can create the platform for a more productive conversation based on facts. Rob, this is why, aside from just not wanting to get too much involved with it, on my own social media platforms, I very, very rarely post anything that's overtly political. I usually do something to celebrate the president's birthday, and maybe once in a while I'll share something out there that, you know, sort of, because I don't wear it on my sleeve, but it's really no secret where I stand on this. No need to discuss it here. But the point is, very simply, is because we see all these things that happen on the news. Again, news versus journalism, and people get all outraged over the breaking news, and they're all virtue signaled and emotional and everything else. And it's because the people who create these messages are accessing individual truths that are based on their avatars, which, if you understand in marketing an avatar, it's you look for this person who has had X, Y, and Z experience to create that avatar. So they're aiming for the avatars, and they know what to say to get those people all up in arms. And, you know, candidly, I have been made to feel emotional over things I've seen in the news as well. But the reason I don't really post about it is because what I've discovered, and this is almost like a broken record to me at this point, is once the dust settles and you start to see facts and people start fact checking and you start looking what actually happened. Go back and roll the tape. Go back and read the transcript. What did the law actually say? What did that politician actually say?
Mm-hmm.
You find that the actual facts are often not perfectly aligned, to be generous, with that meme or that outrage or that emotion. But the challenge is, by the time we get to that point where the dust settles and we can look at facts, they've moved us on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I usually don't get too involved with it, because by the time people are ready to listen to facts, they've already moved on to the next thing. So there are only select groups, and this is something I want to share with your audience, and this is what it is. And I've said this many times before. As far as knowing my views on certain issues, whether it's the political or socioeconomic or religion or science, things like that tend to be the hot button issues, I've said many times, knowing those views of mine is a privilege to be earned, because I love to have those discussions, but I like to have fact-based discussions with people who are prepared to set all the emotions aside and look at what's actually going on.
I remember a day where, people used to have respect for the office of the president, not necessarily the president himself,
Right.
just the office of the president. And it didn't matter who was in there, Republican or Democrat, you respected the office.
Correct.
Now they don't care. Now they're lobbying threats. They're saying all kinds of stuff, not only against the president, against the office of the president, against his staff, against anybody who would even listen. And it just seems like, not only are we getting so emotional, but the fake news has figured out how to trigger us.
Exactly. And Rob, we actually, in all fairness, we do see this on both sides, because I think you're referring to President Trump and some of the attacks on him. And you see there are also figures on the left who receive similar attacks from people on the opposite side. And where this comes from, in my estimation, is when we move to, I'm going to use the phrase identity politics, not in its traditional form, but I'm going to use it in a different form when we refer to the identity of a human being. So we're referring to, when we think of the President of the United States, we see that gentleman whose face we're used to seeing with that comb over. When we think of people on the left, we think of we can think of certain names as well, and you see those physical characteristics which lead to caricature, which lead to dehumanization. So a combination of focusing the politics on the identity of a human being, because it's easier to like or dislike a human being just on spec than it is to critically and analytically approach a set of facts and form a conclusion, a hypothesis, or an analysis, is kind of where we're going with a lot of this. On one of the episodes of my Business Creators Radio show, we were speaking about badass brands. And I said to my guests, the President of the United States is a badass brand, wouldn't you say? And I said, pause. That is a statement that is likely to be factual, whether the person is listening in 2019, 2024, 2029, because I think we're going to continue to head down this trend where, instead of having fact-based conversations on policies, on the nuances, on what is there that can be investigated and analyzed, we're going to continue to focus it on personalities. And this is going to happen on both sides, and it's going to continue to contribute to the division.
Wow, badass brands. I mean, that's something.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they're attacking him on all kinds of levels, and it doesn't even make sense anymore. They're accusing him of being things he's not, based on, his past. And I look at that and I start reading it. I'm going, yeah, I kind of know which side you're on. Yeah.
Well, and again, this is where we have the message creators focusing on emotions. I remember a situation where somebody had posted, you see a lot of fake Trump tweets out there. And one of the ones you see often is, at least I've seen a number of times, is it has him saying, I need to build a wall around New Mexico because I haven't gotten rid of all the old Mexicans yet. Now, obvious satire. He didn't say that. Come on, I mean, that's Bush League. That's not even a good meme in my personal opinion. And I saw somebody I know post it and was actually getting all hyped up over it. And I messaged him, I said, I want to spare you a little embarrassment. You can go through any tweet checker and find out that this is a fake. In fact, Snopes has an article on this one, false. And they posted on their timeline underneath it, they say, a friend of mine just messaged me to say this is fake, and turns out he's right. Well, that actually outraged one of the other commenters because they needed to believe so bad that he said that because they needed to fit within their worldview. It actually conflicted with their truth to find out that that was fake.
Yeah.
And again, this is a tangible example, but we actually see this on both sides, and we see figures on both sides of the political spectrum receiving the same type of treatment. So it's not just one person, it's not just one side. This is actually pretty universal, and it's very sad.
Well, what can people do? I mean, how do they come together to, make social and politics better on social so they're not getting so triggered?
First thing you can do is agree with them. Oh, whoa, wait a minute. Somebody is expressing that diametric opposite view, and I agree with them? Well, think about this. People often will actually have similar alignments on agreeing that there is a problem to be solved. They may interpret the problem differently. They may believe there's a different solution. We can apply that to anything. We can apply that to healthcare. We can apply that to border security. We can apply that to anything, really. I mean, I could just go down a list of all the things we go back and forth on almost a daily basis. And I've actually come up with a formula. And since I know that this is something that'll be on your website and other networks that people can go back and subscribe to your network and listen to again, I'm just going to share this with you. So, Rob, let's say you came to me with a point of view and I, was just completely the opposite of mine. What I would do is I would look for, what is it we're actually discussing? We believe that there's some sort of problem. We may identify the problem differently. We may identify the solution differently, but we agree that there's a problem and it's within this certain realm or on this certain topic. So here's a phrase, here's something you can use for pretty much anything. I'll say, Rob, I agree. These sorts of issues can be very problematic if they go unheeded and unaddressed. I can definitely see what you mean there. So just one question, if I may. And then what I do is I introduce my counterpoint to what you said as a question asked from a place of genuine curiosity, not like a challenge question or, oh, come on, Rob, really? I just ask from a place of genuine curiosity, like, hey, Rob, just one question if I'm away. Have you thought about, and then I just state my opposing view as a question. And then I encourage an environment where we can have an honest back and forth dialogue about what I'm saying and about what you're saying. And then we can go look at facts. And since we have these things called smartphones, we can do fact checking during the conversation. That's the other beauty part of the democratization of information dissemination is with these tiny little mega computers we carry in our pockets and we're doing this on all day. We can also be, mine's in the other room turned off. We can also be helping to clear up this issue and getting closer to facts rather than the emotions of our own individual truths.
And if that doesn't work, because we all have trolls that come after us.
Yeah.
Then we delete them, we block them, we kick them off of our lists. And some people say, well, I don't want to do that because they're friends. No, they're not. Get rid of them.
See, this is where Facebook changed not only the lexicon, but also the emotions behind the meaning of the word friend. I mean, you have almost 5,000 friends. I have a bit less than that because I'm a little later to the game than you, which is fine. But what is a friend? I've seen these videos where people actually went to the houses of their Facebook friends and said, hey, man, can I come in? They're like, dude, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
So by using that word friend, we've created a new emotion and unfriending. And if you don't agree with me, just unfriend me now. We have literally nothing in common. But let me ask you this question. If there's somebody on LinkedIn that you don't want to do business with, you make a big deal out of it, you just click delete. If there's somebody on Twitter you don't like that we're tweeting, just unfollow. If there's somebody on Instagram, you don't like their pictures, you just unfollow. But because we've injected this word friend, which has a connotation of human connection, that's part of where the emotions of this have come in. And you combine that with the use of avatars by the message creators to elicit emotions, and it becomes a very, very personal thing. You mentioned earlier that it seems like hot button issues have become so personal these days, where if we don't agree with each other strongly enough, the other person's absolute evil, and they need to be unfriended, their business needs to be boycotted, their boss needs to know about it, and everybody who's friends with them, I need to unfriend them too, because how dare them.
Oh yeah.
It's because of the use of that word friend. So
Yeah,
I program myself to think of Facebook, to think of these as, I think of them as followers. I follow people, people follow me. People who I interact with regularly, people who I know outside the platform, those are friends. So I just changed the terminology in my mind, and that helps me to sift through it more efficiently and with less emotion.
And even big corporations are not immune to it, because they'll give money to certain parties, and another, an individual will say, well, I don't like their stance. They're giving money to them, so I'm going to boycott them now.
That's stupid. I do business with a lot of companies that have views different than mine. So what? I care that they deliver me a quality service and treat me with respect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I feel like I'm getting what I'm paying for, that's fine.
Yeah,
I mean, since Citizens United, companies are people too, so we just got to live with it.
and
Yeah, get the emotions out of it. Seriously, get a grip.
If I boycotted every company that I disagreed with, I wouldn't have anything to do. I mean,
seriously,
I wouldn't have a computer in front of me. I wouldn't have, this ginger ale. I wouldn't. I mean, the whole list of things that, heck, I probably wouldn't even be wearing Star Wars. I mean, because there's always there's always some company out there that's doing something that I'm not gonna agree with.
Yeah, I mean, since Citizens United, companies are people too. You just got to live with it. And to me, if that is all it takes to break the thread for you, then again, go back. And this is not a criticism. I'm saying go back and create an understanding of the distinction between facts and truth. Understand news versus journalism. Understand emotions and avatars. And just pay attention to what's going on when you receive these messages, and look into what you're actually hearing, what you're reading, and what's being said to you, and look at it from a fact-based perspective. Because between these truths, my truth and your truth, as they say, the facts are actually somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have another, 20 months before the next election, and it's just going to get...
already going on. There ain't no 20 months. The next presidential election began before President Trump was sworn in. Just like the 2016 election began before Barack Obama's second term began. It's just with this endless cycle of fundraising and campaigning and everything that's gone into our system, and again, all the messaging and all the programming that go along with it, it takes 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like to the point where there is really, in my estimation, there is no off season.
No, and when Obama was running his second time, social media just I was burned out. I just didn't want to get on it, but I had to, because this is what we do for our clients day in and day out. But now I think it's getting even worse now than it was, all those years ago. And
well, think about the technological advances. You go back to the democratization of information dissemination. Think about all the advances that happened between 2012 and 2016. I'll tell you the biggest one, which is the prevalence of being able to just go live on a social network and start talking.
Oh, yeah.
That existed in 2012, but it wasn't really something the masses could do.
Mm-hmm.
There were smartphones that had video cameras, but they weren't that good.
Right.
Wi-Fi wasn't as good, and it wasn't as easy to make that just work by clicking a button. But it's gotten so much easier within that 4-year span. To me, that's one of the catalytic drivers.
And these things have made everybody their own personal media company.
Exactly. I use that exact phrase. Everybody's their own news network. You got
Yeah.
followers, you got the ability to speak, you're a news network.
Yeah, and it's competing against the media corporations that have been doing this for 100 years. And so, now all they're doing now is generating stuff that's going to trigger people, because they know that's what's going to win them awards or ratings
Yeah.
or advertising. And yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I think there's a lot of hope for it, and I see every day that I have people on across the spectrum that I speak with just about every day. Some people I agree with 100% of the time. Some people I agree with 90% of the time. Some people I agree with 20% of the time. Some people I agree with 0% of the time. And I'm able to have friendships and productive conversations with all these folks,
Right.
because I look at them and I look to understand what is their truth.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know more about them. I want to know more about where they come from. I want to know more about what's brought them to this place where they are today. And I want to see what it is in their history that has formed their views. Because when you understand that, you tend to understand a human being. And then you can understand. Rob, I think you may have heard this phrase before. Rob, has anybody ever asked you why you vote against your interests?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's happened to me too. My immediate response to that is, okay, what are my interests?
Yeah.
And they will start listing off a list of their platforms and positions and things like that. I said, okay, that's great. That's great. You read somebody's platform. What are my interests? What do I see through my eyes? What's on my mind when I wake up in the morning? What are the issues that I face during the day? What impacts me personally in a way that I feel, see, and comprehend?
Mm-hmm.
Until you take the time to know the person as a person, you don't know that.
No, and you're not going to be able to change their mind on social media, throwing, all kinds of emotional
Right.
posts.
Well, yeah. Let me give your listeners another tip for this. You're very rarely, and you said this yourself, going to change somebody's mind by attacking them and telling them you're wrong.
Right.
So I have a role, and I have, I mean, as you know, I have a certain set of positions on different issues, and they don't exactly line up according to what somebody told me they have to be. So if you believe this, you also have to believe this. I don't go for that. I take each issue on its own merits. So basically, if people knew the full spectrum, I'd get kicked out of all the meetings. That being said, if you want to persuade somebody, and this is what I do to persuade people. So let's say that I'm a supporter and we're going to call this person candidate X. I'm not going to go around to people saying, candidate Y is a total everything that ends in IST, scumbag, loser, criminal, who can't swim, and we know this because we saw him walking on water. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them questions about candidate Y. So what is it about candidate Y? What do you like about them? What do you support about them? Tell me more about their background and why you think they're a good choice. And if people want to know about candidate X that I'm supporting, I'll tell them. See, I don't want to have conversations about why Y is bad. I want to have conversations about why X is good. And without getting into any details, because I don't want to belabor this interview with it, I actually can say that at least 3 people I'm thinking of right off the top of my head credit me with converting them to, let's say, candidate X. And I never questioned their previous beliefs. I never told them they were wrong. I never argued with them. I never said, why do you support something that's against your interests? All I did was say good things about candidate X. So your listeners can decide who candidate X is, who candidate Y is, what issue Z is, what outrage Q is, whatever it is. They can assign whatever values they want to that algebraic equation that I just created, and just simply follow the same steps to solve it for X.
Wow, amazing.
And that's more math than I actually know. See.
So, how do the listeners want to get a hold of you if they want to discuss more of this?
Well, first of all, Rob, I want to thank you so much. I'm really looking to get more out there with the engage, not enraged topic. And I've been interviewed on this a few times lately, and every conversation is different, which is why I really value it. And Rob, you bring a very unique perspective to social media and the online conversation. And you are a great force for helping to create positivity and helping people also understand the negativity so they know what to avoid. What I love about you as a mentor and as guide is you point it out for people without necessarily telling them what they need to do. And that's what I like. And that's what they say. A good mentor shows people the facts, but leaves it to them to decide what they need to do. In many cases, the student already knows the answer. The teacher just needs to help them see that, and that's what you do. I mean, going back to some of your books on social media, some of which I've read and have been very influential to me, just wanted to say that. So I have a book too. Groundhog Day is an event, not a business strategy. And this is all about, this is for the entrepreneur, the small business owner, or even private human being who is finally ready to solve those pesky issues that keep holding things back, that never seem to go away. Why is it a year later we're having this same conversation again? And some of the themes inside the book, it has this thing called the spring formula, which helps you get out of the winter cold and experience the warm spring sun, like when the groundhog comes out. And what we've shared today, our conversation about engage, not enrage, is related to the N in the spring formula, which is name your terms with powerful language. So you saw how I looked at how we use words, the emotional charge behind words, the connotation behind words. And when we understand that, and when we can use that to our advantage, we can create more productive conversations, remove some of this divisive emotion, and begin doing things that help us create better solutions together. Because, you know, I may have solution A, you may have solution B. I bet you we put our heads together, we find solution C that's better than either one of us came up with. And we really need to see more of that just throughout the world. So whatever I can do to help benefit that. So real quick, www.thegroundhogbook.com. It's got all your links. We got a Kindle, we got a paperback. I encourage you to pick this up, and I'd love to hear from you.
And if you haven't watched or listened to episode 1, where we talk in depth about the book, then please go back and listen. So thank you, Adam. Thank you for helping everyone understand how to be better at politics on social media or not engage at all. And pick up Adam's book on Amazon and Kindle and print, and buy a couple for your friends. So
Rob, thank you so much.
have a great day, and we'll see you on the next episode.